Imagine you are the founder of a new dynasty, tasked with convincing people that you are the one who brought them progress. However, there is a problem. At depths of 5, 10, and 15 meters lie entire buildings made of perfect red bricks with technologies you have lost. These underground palaces are proof of degradation. While you transport soil by carts, beneath you lie the cities of those who knew more, built higher, and lived better. With one stroke, you turn former living halls into foundations, complex engineering systems into protection against freezing, and a global catastrophe into a slow accumulation of household waste. What will you choose? To acknowledge that humanity has been set back in its development, or to conjure a tale of gradual evolution, where you are the pinnacle of creation and everything beneath you simply isn't worth attention? Forget about the flood and Tartaria. Today we will focus on mathematics. Simple calculations that dismantle the official version without any conspiracy theories. Open the calculator. A typical street in the historical center. 1 kilometer long, 20 meters wide. Imagine it has been covered with 3 meters of material. Calculate the volume. 1 kilometer is 20 meters, which equals 20,000 square meters. We multiply by 3 meters of height, 60,000 cubic meters of soil. A modern Kamaz truck carries 12 cubic meters per trip. Dividing that, we get 5,000 trips. If we line up these trucks in a column, with each truck being 5 meters long, it would stretch for 25 kilometers. For 1 kilometer of street. We are told this is a cultural layer. Over 200 years, people have deposited dirt, trash, waste. Gradually, the ground has risen. Let's verify this version. 60,000 cubic meters over 200 years. 300 cubic meters each year. 25 trips of a Kamaz truck every year. 2 trucks per month. But wait. Kamaz trucks only appeared in the 70s of the 20th century. In the 19th century, there were horses with carts. One cart could carry a maximum of 500 kilograms of soil. 300 cubic meters is 750 tons. To transport that volume, 1,500 trips of carts are needed each year. 4 carts every single day, all year round, for 100 years straight. Where were they taken? Outside the city? Then where are the dumps? Where are the giant hills of trash from the 19th century around Moscow, Paris, Rome? They are gone. And the main thing, imagine you live in a house. Every year, the street rises by 1.5 centimeters. After 10 years, it's risen by 15 centimeters. After 50, it's risen by 75. Your windows are half underground. Do you endure it? Or do you dig out the house? But no one dug it up. People adapted. And a generation later, archival documents began to appear with entries, "Building with a basement floor," as if it had always been that way. This doesn't resemble a slow accumulation. It feels like a disaster. Watch closely. Omsk, Lenin Street. The Chernov's house, mid-1800s. A wealthy merchant's mansion. During the restoration in the 2000s, they dug around the foundation. They discovered something strange. The first floor is completely buried, 3 meters deep, with windows, doors, and rooms. What is it covered with? Clay. Clean, dense, homogeneous, without a single layer. When archaeologists excavate a cultural layer, they see history, a layer of fire blackened by coal. Above it, construction debris, broken bricks. Then household waste, ceramics, bones. Again, construction. Each stratum tells its own story. It can be dated by the artifacts found. In the Chernov's house, there is a single page, a monolith of clay. No inclusions, no artifacts. As if a giant scoop had scooped up pure clay and dumped it onto the first floor. Once. Quickly. This is not accumulation. Look at the windows in this clay. Full-sized, with arched openings, with decorative casings, with brickwork around them. The door portal made of hewn stone. Inside, remnants of plaster with painting. Who decorates the basement? Basements are being made utilitarian. Rough brickwork, narrow ventilation slots, earth floors. But here are the grand windows. Decor. Finishing touches. This was the first floor, residential. It was buried. The most obvious explanation is that dirt was gradually brought in from the streets, which leads to unevenness. There is more trash near the market. In a quiet alley, there is less. The logic is simple, but the reality is different. A layer lays down uniformly, throughout Lenin Street, throughout the center of Omsk, 3 meters everywhere, like a blanket that covered the city all at once. There should be layers if it's centuries. There should be dips where the basements are, elevations where the dumps are. None of this exists. A flat monolith. And one more detail. The windows of the buried floor are bricked up, but not from the outside, from the inside. The owners, seeing the clay from the outside, filled in the openings from their side. Windows to the ground are no longer needed. So the burying happened faster than they managed to organize the unearthing. Not over decades, but within years, maybe even months. The numbers don't add up. Now about the depth, about what is truly hidden. Moscow, Polytechnic Museum. Red brick, arched windows, towers. The end of the 19th century. During renovations in the 2000s, they began to strengthen the foundation. The building is old. Support is needed. A standard procedure. The engineers expected to find the foundation at a depth of 4, at most 5 meters. This is normal for Moscow. They dig 3 meters, 4, 5. The wall continues downward. They dig deeper, 6, 7, 8. The wall doesn't end. 10 meters, 12, 15 meters, 18. At a depth of 18 meters, they found what can be called a foundation. 18 meters below the modern ground level, the height of a 6-story building, a whole structure beneath the asphalt. And the strangest thing is, these walls do not resemble a foundation, not rubble stone, not rough concrete. Face brick, red fired, with even seams. Plaster. Decorative bands of patterned masonry. Someone carefully built at a depth where no one would see. Moreover, at a depth of 10 meters, arched recesses bricked up were discovered. In shape, they are identical to the windows on the facade. Full-fledged windows, beneath 10 meters of ground. Who designs the windows in the foundation? The most obvious explanation is protection against freezing. Moscow, cold winters. A deep foundation is needed. It sounds logical. Let's look at the building regulations. SNIP, a document that defines how to build in each region. The depth of frost penetration in the Moscow region is 1 meter 40 centimeters. This is the average value. The maximum is 1 meter 80 centimeters during the harshest winters. To be safe, they take 2 meters, and in extreme cases, 2.5 for reliability. 18 meters, a margin of 9 times. Did you play it safe? Buried a 6-story building made of quality bricks with decor underground? Calculate the cost. 1 cubic meter of brickwork consists of 400 bricks. The underground part of the museum has a base area of 1,000 square meters and wall thickness of 1.5 meters, totaling about 2,000 cubic meters for the entire height. 800,000 bricks, underground, which no one will see. Every brick to be fired, transported, and laid. Months of work by dozens of masons. Gigantic sums of money. Why? The foundation is made from cheap materials. Rubble, unprocessed stones. Pour it with a mix, and a solid mass is ready. Or concrete, cement, sand, gravel. Inexpensive. The purpose of the foundation is to bear the load, not to look beautiful. Why adorn what is forever in darkness? The architectural logic is simple. What is visible is beautiful. Money is spent on facade bricks and stucco. Underground, it's functional and cheap. In the Polytechnical, the logic is reversed. The underground part is like the above ground. Face brick, decor, bricked up windows with arches. No one builds like that. So, when it was being constructed, these 18 meters were above the ground. They were floors, rooms, perhaps basements, but with windows and ventilation. Warehouses, workshops, lecture halls, underground levels of the museum that were later buried. Multiply this by the entire center of Moscow. Hundreds of buildings, each with an unknown number of meters of structures underground. According to geolocation data, the Kremlin's communications run under the walls at 12 to 15 meters deep. The Bolshoi Theater is similar. The Winter Palace in St. Petersburg revealed underground levels deeper than 10 meters during its restoration. Everywhere is the same. Fully equipped structures underground, with finishing, with windows, with architecture. But when did this happen? What could have covered the cities for meters in such a short time? Let's examine the chronology. Events that historians consider separately, but which could have been parts of one. 1811-12. The New Madrid earthquakes. North America. The Mississippi region. A series of powerful tremors. Changed the landscape for hundreds of kilometers. The Mississippi flowed backwards. The river changed direction, current, not for an hour, for several weeks. To make the river flow backward, the slope of the riverbed needs to be changed. Raise one bank, lower the other. Shift the layers by meters. Alter the bottom's relief over a vast distance. Witnesses reported that the ground trembled like the sea. Trees fell as if pushed. Fountains of water and sand erupted from cracks. Rivers disappeared. Lakes emerged where there had once been forests. Entire islands sank underwater, while others rose above the surface. And there was strangeness. After the earthquakes, a fog hung in the air, dense, unfading, with the smell of sulfur. Witnesses described it as smoke, but there were no fires. The fog lingered for weeks, making breathing difficult. What is this? Dust from earthquakes? Or something else? 1816. The year without summer. The temperature in the northern hemisphere dropped by several degrees. Snow fell in Europe in June. In America, the harvest froze. Famine. Mass migration from villages to cities. The sky has turned red, crimson. The sun is like a dull disk behind a veil. It's dark as twilight during the day, for months. Historians say that the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in 1815 sent ash into the stratosphere, blocking the sun. Yes, it explains the cold and darkness. But it doesn't explain the other thing. Witnesses describe not only the cold, strange, muddy rains. The rain fell with a reddish water, leaving a layer of sludge on the ground and roofs. Sticky, dense, unlike ordinary dirt. As it dried, it turned into a crust that was difficult to scrape off. Red dust fell from the sky. It covered fields, roads, and roofs. People wrote about the bloody rain. The church called it a sign of wrath. A fog that lingers for months. Dense, stifling, with a smell. Some said it was sulfur, others rotten meat, and others still burnt earth. If the ash is from a volcano, why did it settle like dense mud rather than dry dust? Volcanic ash is light and loose. Yet here, there is a description of a sticky mass. What if the air was filled not only with volcanic ash, but also with soil lifted by other means? By earthquakes, by explosions, by collapses. From the 1830s to the 1850s, large-scale reconstructions began around the world. Too large in scale, too synchronous. Europe is razing its streets. Paris, the reconstruction by Baron Haussmann. At first glance, modernization, new sewage systems, boulevards, but they are burying the old level. The first floors are below the new pavement. Why didn't they excavate the buildings? Why did they bury them? Because there was already soil there that they couldn't handle. America is the same. After the fire of 1889, Seattle raised its streets by 5 meters. Authorities explain this as protection against tides and improvement of sewage systems. Boston, New York, and San Francisco similarly at that time. Russia is leveling its centers. Moscow was reconstructed after the fire in 12. St. Petersburg, ongoing work on raising the embankments and filling in the lowlands. Asia has the same processes. Istanbul, Beijing, Tokyo. Everywhere, it's the middle of the 19th century with large-scale earthworks. Nonconformity. A coordinated response to a common problem. Open the world map. Mark the cities where the cultural layer is over 3 meters. Moscow, St. Petersburg, Prague, Vienna, Paris, London, Rome, Istanbul, New York, Boston, San Francisco, Chicago, Omsk, Tomsk, Kazan, even small cities. Global network. All continents, all climate zones, from the tropics to the north. Too synchronized for slow trash. Historians will say it's different decades with nothing in common, each city for its own reasons. Look at the time frames. In the scale of history, 50 years is a blink, one generation. Cities have officially existed for thousands of years, like Rome. They were buried all in the span between 1810 and 60. In 50 years. 1% of their official age. If Rome is 2,500 years old, why is there a 3-meter layer not accumulated over these 2,500 years, but only over the last 50 of the 19th century? All at once. And the strangeness. Photographs of cities from the 1850s, 1870s, 1880s. Rare snapshots. On the sidewalks, everywhere are glass prisms, purple or transparent blocks in the pavement. What is this? According to textbooks, it is for illuminating basements. Light passes through prisms into underground spaces. Daylight for basements. Think about it. Glass prisms are an expensive technology. They need to be cast from high-quality glass. Cut at the right angle for light refraction. Fit into a sturdy metal frame. Seal them against water. One prism is like several windows. It is impractical for a basement where coal and potatoes are stored. Simple grids were placed on the ground there. It's cheap and it works. But prisms are an engineering solution for spaces where light is critical. Workshops, shops, living rooms. Too expensive for basements. So, the underground rooms were residential or working spaces after being filled in. Not storages, not machinery. Living rooms, workshops, shops, maybe residential apartments. When they filled them in, the owners tried to preserve light. They installed expensive prisms, but in the end, it was all abandoned anyway. Living underground is impossible. Now the main thing. What was it covered with? Where did such volumes come from? Omsk, Museum of Arts. Excavations revealed not a cultural layer, not trash, ceramics, or bones. They discovered clay, pure, dense, without organics. Where did 3 meters of pure clay come from in the center? The nearest quarry is 15 kilometers away, hauling 60,000 cubic meters by horse-drawn carts, a caravan as long as the city. Thousands of wagons, months of work, enormous costs. All to fill the first floor of your house? Absurd. Could it be a flood? Did the river overflow and bring silt? River silt is something entirely different. Loose, saturated with organic matter. Layered. Remnants of plants, shells, fish bones. When it dries, it cracks and sinks. But in Omsk, Moscow, Prague, there's a monolith. Dense clay. It settled once and has hardened forever. Characteristic of a mudflow. A village. Settled in the mountains. Water mixes with the soil, forming a liquid mass that moves like an avalanche. It fills everything in its path, infiltrating through windows and doors, filling rooms to the ceiling. Then it quickly loses water. The soil compacts, turning into stone. But for the flood to reach the flat city, a wave is needed. A gigantic wave of water and soil. It is created by an earthquake, a mountain collapse, or a powerful explosion. And we read the records of 1816. Muddy rains, red ash from the sky. Across the world, simultaneously. It's not rain, it's precipitation. Sediment of what? What lifted such volumes into the air that they settled for months, covering cities by meters? 3 options. Celestial body, a series of powerful eruptions, an artificial explosion of colossal strength. It doesn't matter what. What matters is the result. The scheme is simple. Step 1. Event. The ground and water rise into the atmosphere for hundreds of meters, perhaps kilometers. A suspension forms, thick as fog. Step 2. Sediment. The sediment settles. Not immediately, not in a rush, but gradually, like snow. For weeks, perhaps months. It settles in lowlands, river valleys, on the ground floors. The thickness depends on the terrain. In some places, it's a meter, in others, 5. Step 3. Hardening. The ground loses water, compacts, turning into a monolith. Buildings are buried. Roads are hidden. Rivers change their courses. Step 4. Survival. People dig up what they can. Main buildings, palaces, town halls. The rest is abandoned. They create entrances from the windows of what used to be the second floor. The former first floor becomes a basement. There is a city where this is documented: Seattle. After the fire of 1889, the authorities decided to raise the streets by 5 meters. New sidewalks were built above the old ones. The first floors became below ground level. For a while, residents descended stairs from the sidewalk to access shops. Later, the space between the levels was filled in. The former streets became underground tunnels. Today, it is a tourist attraction known as Seattle Underground. Why is it planned engineering in Seattle, while in Moscow, Paris, and Rome, it's a cultural layer? The process is the same. The old level was buried, and a new one was built higher. In Seattle, they're talking about sewage systems and protection against floods. Fine. But where exactly do such buried cities come from, where the sewage systems were operational beforehand? Paris has had sewage systems since Roman times. Moscow isn't flooded by tides, it's not by the sea. Version for one city, not for 100. Pattern, global. And there is a detail that completely undermines the official version. In the underground parts of old buildings, the bricks are larger. This has been noted by restorers in Moscow, Prague, and St. Petersburg. It's the same everywhere. The modern standard brick measures 250 millimeters in length, 120 in width, and 65 in height. This has been the norm for a century and a half. Meanwhile, the underground bricks found in buried sections measure 300 by 150 by 80, and even larger. Why is brick more expensive for foundations? More clay, longer firing time, higher costs. Heavier, harder to carry. And it looks nicer, face brick underground? Maybe the standards have changed? Yes, they changed, in the opposite direction. With the development of industry, bricks became smaller. Material savings, faster production, lower costs. Smaller is cheaper. Therefore, in the 1900s, the size was decreasing, not increasing. Here, it's the opposite. Below, in the so-called foundation, the bricks are large, expensive, and of high quality. Above, in the visible part, they are small and cheap. A large brick is a sign of advanced firing technology. To evenly heat a substantial volume of clay, kilns with precise temperature control and air supply regulation are required. Such kilns were rare in the 19th century, yet large bricks can be found everywhere, in the underground parts of hundreds of buildings. So, the underground part is older than the above-ground one. It's not the foundation for the house. It's the surviving first floor plus an added second floor on top. We live in extensions. And the final blow regarding the trash narrative. San Francisco. The financial district, skyscrapers, company offices. When digging foundations, ships are regularly found. Entire sailing vessels from the 19th century, at a depth of 5 to 8 meters, beneath the buildings. We are being asked to believe a story like this. During the gold rush of the 1850s, many ships arrived in the bay with nowhere to go. Entrepreneurial individuals deliberately sank them, using them as fill to expand the shoreline. They created new land and built a city. We're looking at the map. These ships are not by the shore. They are in the center of the block, under the offices, hundreds of meters from the water. Did they drag them away and bury them? Why? The ship is valuable. Wood, metal, sails, rigging. Sell it all or use it for construction, especially during the frenzy when materials were scarce. And they were abandoned, with cargo, with cannons. On some ships they find supplies, flour, canned goods, tools. Not looted, not completely rotted, the clay preserved them. As if the crew left everything and rushed away. Why the haste? Because something was approaching that you couldn't escape from on a ship. Ships are not only in San Francisco. Below Amsterdam, Venice, Istanbul. Port cities. The same picture everywhere, vessels underground, in places that are now land. Not burying ships, burying harbors. If the cities were covered by 3 to 5 meters of sediment, the ports were the first to be buried. Lowlands, river mouths. Water plus mud flow equals a gigantic debris avalanche. The ships did not manage to leave. They were engulfed, settling on a bottom that became a street. The scheme of the disaster is complete. Step 1. Event. Cosmic, geological, or artificial. Step 2. Raising water and soil into the atmosphere. Step 3. Mud rains settling in the lowlands. Step 4. Rapid hardening through chemical processes in a mineral-rich slurry. Step 5. Adaptation of the survivors. Life on the former second floor. And you know what's the most frightening of all? Take a list of cities with buried floors. The years of official reconstructions. Moscow, restoration after the fire of the 12th year. But it's buried 3 meters deep. A fire doesn't work that way. Paris, Haussmann's reconstruction in the 50s. They raised the streets, buried the old level. London, the Great Stink, 58th year. They built sewage systems over the old one. New York, 60s, burying areas to meet sanitation standards. Around the world, through a single window, under one pretext: sanitation, sewage, progress. Well, it coincided, you might say. The Industrial Revolution, after all. The Industrial Revolution is factories, steam engines, railways. But here there's filling in, the destruction of the lower levels. Why? When a building is buried in soil, it loses its basements, storage rooms, and warehouses. It loses utilities, pipes, and channels on the first floor or below it. It loses access to the foundation. It becomes impossible to repair, impossible to investigate, and impossible to understand how it was originally constructed. Not improvement, cleansing. What if the cultural layer is not a consequence of a catastrophe, but rather its concealment? What if someone deliberately buried the traces of a pre-catastrophic civilization? First, a catastrophe occurred, burying cities by a meter, maybe a meter and a half. Then, new people or authorities came and covered the rest. They built it up to 3 or 5 meters to hide what was below. Think about it. We live on the second floors. The first floors are below us. But what is beneath the first floors? What lies at a depth of 10, 20, 30 meters? Every sidewalk you walk on is the roof of someone's home. Every basement is someone's living room. Every half window in the pavement is someone's front entrance. Step outside. Look at the old building. See the window going down into the ground. Ask the question, what lies 3 meters beneath your feet? Stop. Take a closer look at the details. It's not just a window to the basement. Notice the masonry around it. An arch made of hewn stone. A decorative cornice above the window. Remnants of plasterwork. Someone invested money and time to embellish this opening. Basements are not meant to be decorated. A basement is simply a hole, maybe with a grid for ventilation. But here, it's architecture. A full-fledged window, designed for looking out from the inside, not into the ground. Note the height of these windows from the basement level. They often don't start from the basement floor, but are positioned higher, about a meter or a meter and a half above it. This means that when the building was constructed, the ground level was even lower. These windows were at a normal height from the floor of the first floor. Count how many of such windows are in your city. Walk through the historic center. Every other building. On some streets, every single one. Thousands of buildings. Millions of cubic meters of buried spaces. Everything in one historical moment. 50 years. One generation. Imagine living in the year 1815. Your home is on solid ground. The windows of the first floor are of normal height. You can see the street, people, and horses. Several years pass. 1816, the year without summer. Strange rains, red dust, fog. Then it passes. But you notice that the street level has risen. Not by much, maybe half a meter. It's unclear where the soil came from. You think it might have been washed in by the rain. You dig out the entrance. Years go by. The level rises. Now it's at 1 meter. Your windows are half buried in the ground. You can only see the heads of passers-by and the wheels of carts. You're trying to dig it up, but so are the neighbors. There's nowhere to put the soil. They dump it back on the street, a vicious circle. The more you dig, the higher it grows around you. The authorities are making decisions. They will raise the sidewalks. The city will be leveled to a new height. The first floors are declared technical, basement levels. Entrances are created from what used to be the second floor. Old doors are bricked up. Another 20 years pass. The new generation doesn't even remember that these basements were the first floors. History has been rewritten. In the documents, the building has a basement level for technical needs. No one questions why there are full-sized windows with moldings in the basement. It's called normalization. Through one generation, anomaly becomes the norm. Through 2 generations, it becomes tradition. Through 3, it's always been that way. If you go to a historian now and say, "Look at the first floors underground," he will reply, "Well, yes, that's the cultural layer. It's accumulated over 1,000 years." If you show calculations that 3 meters of homogeneous clay cannot accumulate in 1,000 years, he will say, "Well, then it's the characteristics of the terrain. The groundwater has risen." Show it to the world at the same time. They'll say, "Well, the Industrial Revolution. Cities were growing everywhere. The standard of living increased." Ask where the millions of cubic meters of soil in city centers come from, where there are no quarries and landfills. It will remain silent, because there is no answer in the official history. But the earth remembers. Every buried window is a witness. Every meter of the cultural layer is material evidence. Every ship beneath the office building is a clue. There was a disaster, a global one, rapid. Within a few years, the world changed. Cities sank into the ground. Rivers changed their courses. The climate cooled. People migrated, abandoned their homes, and searched for new lands. Then came those who rewrote history, who explained everything rationally: the cultural layer, the Industrial Revolution, sanitary standards, urban development. And we, the descendants of those who survived, live in structures built on the ruins of the old world. We walk on the roofs of buried houses. We call basements what used to be ground floors. We ask no questions. But as soon as you start counting, the whole structure collapses. Mathematics doesn't lie. Physics doesn't lie. The ground doesn't just appear out of thin air. 3 meters over 200 years, 5 KAMAZ trucks monthly per kilometer in an era when there were no KAMAZ trucks. Absurd. Homogeneous clay without layers is not an accumulation. Deposit. Instantaneous. Fast. 18 meters beneath the Polytechnic Museum is not a foundation. Buried floors. An entire building underground. Ships under San Francisco with supplies on board are not a special filling, a catastrophe from which they couldn't escape. Glass prisms in sidewalks around the world are not for basements. They are an attempt to preserve light in living spaces that have found themselves underground. The synchronization of reconstructions in the 1840s and 1860s across all continents is not a coincidence. It is a coordinated erasure of traces. And most importantly, large quality bricks underground and small cheap ones above ground are not an evolution of technology. They are degradation. We live in structures built on the foundation of a more advanced civilization. Truth is beneath our feet, 3 meters down. And there is another world, a world that we are not shown. A world that doesn't fit into history books. A world destroyed or buried just 200 years ago. As we walk through these buried streets, these interred cities, history keeps lying. It continues to recount gradual development, the slow accumulation of cultural layers, the Industrial Revolution as the cause of change. But it's worth stopping, looking down, seeing the window in the asphalt, asking the question, why is it there? And the whole story begins to crack. Because simple mathematics is enough to shatter the lies of centuries. History speaks of a cultural layer. Mathematics speaks of a momentary slip. Archaeology speaks of another civilization. Who to believe? The truth is underfoot, literally. Let's solidify this with specifics, so that the next time you step outside, you know what to look for. Moscow, Kitai-Gorod, an old trading district. Walk along Varvarka. Almost every building there has windows that lead down to the pavement. The Old English Court, a monument from the 16th century. Its first floor is 2 meters below the current ground level. Inside, when you go down, you see full vaulted ceilings 3 meters high. This was a trading hall. Now it's called a basement. Petersburg, Nevsky Prospect. House 17, the Stroganov Palace. From the side of the Moika, the half windows of the basement floor are visible. But if you go down to the embankment, you'll see these full-sized windows with arched openings. The embankment level was raised by 1.5 meters in the 19th century, leaving the windows half buried in the ground. Paris, the Marais district, the old Jewish quarter. Buildings from the 17th and 18th centuries. Almost everywhere, the ground floors are below street level. Some buildings show traces of old entrances, now a meter beneath the asphalt. They bricked them up, creating new entrances higher up. Prague, Old Town Square, Town Hall. The restoration of the cellars uncovered another level of streets beneath the modern surface, with old cobblestones, with drainage ditches. This level was filled in during the 19th century. Rome, the Colosseum, the arena of the amphitheater is 8 meters below the modern ground level surrounding it. Historians claim it was intentionally excavated, but look at the structure. The arena walls are not the walls of a basement. They are the walls of the first floor with decorative finishes, arches, niches for statues. They were buried, then partially excavated, but not completely. Istanbul, the Basilica Cistern, a vast underground reservoir from the Byzantine era, at a depth of about 10 meters beneath the modern city. Tour guides say it has always been underground. But look at the columns, adorned with capitals, carvings, bases shaped like the overturned heads of Medusa Gorgon. Why decorate something that will be underwater in darkness? Was it a temple or a public building? It was flooded and buried. The Byzantines used the ruins as a water reservoir. Omsk. We already talked about the Chernovy House, but there are dozens like it. The Drama Theater on Lenin Street. The first floor is buried under 2.5 meters of debris. The trading arcades from the 19th century. The basement windows are actually the windows of the first floor of the shops and stores. Kazan, Kremlin, the Annunciation Cathedral. Restoration revealed the remains of an older temple beneath the cathedral, 2 meters lower, with frescoes on the walls. These frescoes were at the eye level of the parishioners. This means that the ground level was 2 meters lower back then, and it wasn't 1,000 years ago, just a few centuries. New York, Manhattan, Financial District. The construction of skyscrapers in the early 20th century uncovered remnants of wooden pavements at a depth of 3 to 4 meters beneath the streets. Old, well preserved. They weren't removed. They were simply covered up, and new roads were built above them. Boston. Beacon Hill, an old neighborhood. There are houses where the main entrance is at the second-floor level. A staircase from the street leads up to it. The first floor is partially buried. In the 19th century, residents simply raised the entrances because digging out was impossible. There was too much soil. There are hundreds, thousands of such examples around the world, in every old city. Everywhere is the same picture. First floors buried, windows into the ground, basements with decorative finishes, impossible volumes of soil, synchrony of the process, and everywhere one explanation: cultural layer, gradual accumulation, development of the city. But mathematics says otherwise. Physics says otherwise. Common sense says otherwise. There was an event, fast, global. It changed the landscape of the planet. It buried cities. It destroyed civilization, or pushed it back centuries. And this event was concealed. It was disguised. Natural causes were cited as an explanation. The history was rewritten so that there was no catastrophe, so that everything appeared as a gradual evolution. But the earth remembers. Each buried house is a memory. Every window in the asphalt is a reminder. Every meter of clay is a clue. And when enough people start asking questions, when enough people start thinking, when enough people start looking down instead of up, then the lie will become impossible. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you won't miss any new investigations. There are many more mysteries and discoveries ahead. We will continue to search for evidence, ask uncomfortable questions, and explore what official science tends to overlook. Because the truth is always close by. You just have to want to see it.